Donald Trump has ordered the National Guard in. This is against the will of the California people and its governments.
Witnesses tell us that there were at least 100 federal agents out there.
At least 100 federal agents, including Border Patrol and other law enforcement. We saw federal agents on horses at the park. Others held weapons while riding in armored vehicles.
To me, this is another example of the administration ratcheting up chaos by deploying what looked like a military operation in an American city.
Marcos Ruiz Evans here. Originally from, my grandfather came from Durango, and my great-grandfather actually fought for Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata, both of them, during the Revolution. Wow. My grandmother was legal. My grandfather is a undocumented, or as the Republicans say, a nasty, horrible illegal. So I come from that. And Spanish was spoken in the House, and I don't see anything wrong with anything I just said.
Considering everything that's happened in the last, month or two since we last spoke, wanted to bring you back on because I feel like since then, so much has happened and transpired in the country, really, especially here in California, specifically in LA. And I wanted to get your take on what's going on with the Calexit movement in response to what's happening under the Trump administration. There's a notable increase in interest in the Calexit movement. I'm seeing that people are just openly saying we can just do it ourselves. We can go on and become our own sovereign state. What benefit is there still to being part of the United States of America, especially right now when the National Guard is being sent into our state, really for no reason other than just to quell protests and to do a show of aggression or show of strength from the president and his administration. So the world is chaos, especially here in the United States. And if we can kind of sift through that and get your take, I feel like that would be very helpful.
Yeah, just a real quick summary for everybody following along. So in the last 2 weeks, Trump has decided to deal with anti-ICE protests by principally Latino people, but not exclusively Latino people, and definitely not exclusively undocumented Latinos who've been seriously protesting ICE. Some people have taken it too far. Of course, I don't support that at all, but the majority have not. In response, Donald Trump has ordered the National Guard in to quell that protest. This is against the will of the California people and its government. So against the will of the government, he sent that in. On top of that, he's decided to send combat-trained Marines who are described as being angry Marines. So when he sent the Marines in on us to deal with the domestic protest, he said these are angry Marines and they're going to be set in. So I'm not sure if that's a law and order message or more of an intimidation message. Additionally, you have to go back to the 1950s to find a time where the federal government ever did anything like that. So we're looking at events that are highly unique, have never happened, or you got to go back 70 to 80 years to see something like that. So certainly new. On top of that, the president and I believe the director of border security hinted or said that they would consider arresting the sitting governor on top of that. And if that was not enough, one of the first Latino senators ever in Los Estados Unidos was thrown down to the ground like a dog. And they thought that was totally fine. The other major piece of news to consider for all of those events is something that's not talked about a lot here in California, and that is the Republican response. It's been nothing. So it's not just that the Marines were set in and the National Guard was sent in against the will of the government and the people to deal with the domestic protests like you would see in a dictatorship. It's not just that sitting governors and head officials are threatened with arrestment as a form of intimidation. It's not just that Latin people, regardless of what level of elected official they become, are treated like dogs and thrown down to the street. It's that the Republicans across America have said absolutely nothing in protest about this. That's the bigger story. There is no group of 10 Republican senators saying, hey, I get most of the parties on board, but there's 10 of us who don't like this. You would occasionally see what they call a group of 8 or group of 10 in the Senate or in the House, or a collection of people may come together, even if you can't get the whole party, and they would issue a rebuke. There's nothing there. Nothing there. And I think that's the bigger story about what's going on. In reaction to that, we've seen the same thing that you have, a massive uptick in support for Calexit. We've received thousands of new email requests in just the last week and a half. It's exploded. And to back up your statement, whether or not it's your opinion, but yes, there are a lot of Californians who are saying, what's the point of this? And I would point out now that we've crossed a intellectual barrier. The Atlantic magazine, that's the Atlantic magazine, which is the foremost policy journal in all of America and the most read serious government policy discussion by all politicians in Washington, D.C., issued an article last week. It's called California versus Trump, if you want to look up the title. In it, they basically say exactly what you intimated. If California can't get disaster assistance, but instead gets Marines and National Guard sent on them and their donor state, why should they be part of this union? The Atlantic magazine, the intellectual backbone of all politicians and DC, literally asked that question last week. We have crossed a line where, and I'm the most qualified person to state this. I've been in here 12, 14 years, right? I started this in 2011. It's 2025, about 14 years. We were laughed at. We were ignored. That was silly. Now we have the highest political, intellectual discussion platform saying, maybe you should consider secession. And they just straight up said it last week. That has never happened in 12 years or 14 years. Now we're there. And it's not, you've never seen that. And now this happens. You can't put that back in the box. It's out now. So when you see the intellectual establishment say that, and when you see massive amounts of the public say this, and I can't give names, but we went to the California Democratic Convention a month ago, and one and only one politician was horrified by speaking to us. That was Eleni Koulounakis, and she didn't want to have anything to do with us. Everybody else that we met, all the governor candidates, assembly candidates, Senate candidates, regular members, went like this. Go on. I'm not saying I'm supporting, just go on. They weren't offended. They weren't angry. They weren't bothered. They were there willing to listen. Now, nobody endorsed us, but everybody was willing to have a 5 to 15-minute conversation with us, and that includes people who are running for governor and could be the next governor of California. We did so well passing out flyers and getting our name done and doing just walking up and meeting people that by the second day when we were introducing ourselves to people, they go, I already heard about you. Additionally, I know a guy who runs a campaign consulting firm. I met him during the gubernatorial recall election years ago. His campaign firm has grown in the background as we've been friends. And he got so big that he was hired by the Harris campaign. And he talked directly to the campaign managers who Harris herself directly hired. And he worked directly for those people on the Harris campaign. So he's high up in the political establishment. He had multiple people at that convention. He wasn't able to go. He called me, Mark, how was the convention? And I go, it's pretty good. I think we did well. And he goes, I heard 4 of the people I sent to the convention who don't know each other all told me Calexit made a show. There's nobody who went to the California Democratic Convention and doesn't know about Calexit and didn't hear about you guys. Then a week and a half later, after we told everybody, hey, watch out, Trump literally does a showcase of everything we warned them about. It couldn't be better timed. And now you have California politicians. So there was a press hearing by, I don't know, a couple members of the assembly. They were all out of LA, but it was in Sacramento. And it was a reaction to National Guard. 2 of them who we met at the convention who didn't officially endorse Calexit literally said on that televised conference, America, federal government, they're not like us. That's nationalist talk. That's secession talk. So we have politicians now saying that American culture, I don't recognize it. It's not part of me. We have the entire California Democratic Caucus who's heard about us. And we have the Atlantic magazine, the top policy magazine, saying this is now a rational discussion on top of everything you've seen and I've seen with just regular people talking about this everywhere. I was on the phone call working on Calexit, And some of our staff members now have longtime friends coming up to them and going, I'm in. Just, I'm in. Not like, oh, you Calexit, tell me more. Just, you're in Calexit, right? Yeah. I'm in. So however you interpret all that. Oh, and I cannot give names, but like we talked on the phone, 2 very high-ranking politicians, high-ranking, who also happen to be part of marginalized communities threatened by Trump, have come to us through back channels and said, I'm in. They didn't say, I want to talk and let's go over it. They said, I'm in, figure out a way to get me involved. So that's all happened in the last 10 days. If I may, the best way to answer this is in kind of like a history timeline, just so everybody can see. When we started in 2012, we were doing okay. In 2014, 2015, which is 10 years ago, we went to the Sacramento Capitol and we were saying, hey, Jerry Brown's the governor. And he told the Chinese government to consider us a separate country. And he says nation state. Come on, guys, we could call ourselves a nation state. People laughed in our face. California, a nation state? Oh my God, that's dumb. Then Newsom said nation state 50,000 times, and now everybody in Sacramento says California is a nation state. There's literally nobody who's a politician or policy thinker or professor or anybody who writes news who thinks it's bizarre to call us a nation state. In 2015, they laughed in our face. Now literally everybody does it. So let's fast forward to 2016. Oh, well, that's interesting, but your movement will never grow. 2016, Trump was elected. 32% of Californians said, I want to secede now. They didn't say, let's talk about it. I'm willing to engage in negotiation or discussion. They said, leave today. And that was by Reuters and Stanford, 2 of the most reputable polling agencies ever. Additionally, not reported by the news, was that it was 47.5% of Californians who were willing to have this discussion. Now, the news presented it as only 32% are for secession, so 2/3 must be against. That is a total lie. The reality was 30% were for, and damn near just under half were not opposed and were willing to discuss. So when I got started in 2011, calling this a nation state, you're an idiot. Saying Californians will ever back this, you are ridiculous. 2015, crushed. 2016, crushed. No one doubts that there's an interest in Calexit now. No one balks at the idea of us calling a nation state. Politicians routinely do that. Now we can fast forward to 2020. We lost a little input because Biden was elected and people thought, oh, it's going to work out. But there was a burgeoning growth in Calexit again because we had been told from 2016 to 2020 that Trump was a fluke and that America will realize that he's wrong and kick him out, and the Republicans will realize that they were wrong and they'll turn on him and he will go away and the jail system will get him. By 2020, it was clear that was not happening. They committed the insurrection. The Republican Party condemned the insurrection and then decided they didn't want to condemn it later. And nobody left MAGA, and Trump became even more ascendant. So a lot of the talking point that we were saying in 2016 that this is Trump's America, nobody wanted to hear that in 2016. Hell no. No, it's not. By 2020, people were starting to hear that. When Trump won in 2024, last year, massive breakthrough. Nobody had faith that the American system of justice could keep him from power. Everybody thought the justice system and the federal government and its system of checks and balances would get him gone. 2016 to 2020, I heard it 50,000 times every day. By 2024, that belief was wiped out. He survived 2 impeachment trials and 5 to 7 court cases. Nobody was like, oh, the federal system will work, checks. And they were like, it's not working. And when he came back in 2024 after committing an insurrection, now everybody was going, I guess this is Trump's America. When we said that in 2016, you guys are idiots. You're crazy. That's not true. It's not Trump's America. He's a fluke. That's not true. The system's going to get out. This is not what America is. Nobody's saying that anymore. So every couple years, things that we say and are laughed at, everybody backs us up and starts saying the same thing. So that's the trajectory. Nation state is silly. And anybody backing secession is silly. saying this is Trump's America is silly, saying the federal system of checks and balances that has existed since 1776 won't work is silly. All those beliefs are wiped out now. And now we're here to this, where the final belief that we were telling people is that America's culturally out of line. We are vastly culturally different, and it will have real consequences for you that you can do nothing to protect yourself from because of the way federalism is set up. People didn't really want to hear that. Now, nobody doubts that. After Trump sent in the Marines and the National Guard and threatened to arrest the governor and threw a senator to the ground and nothing happened and no Republicans protested, there's nobody in California who thinks, oh, Trump can't screw with us because he doesn't like us. We can fight back. No, I mean, Newsom saying, we'll sue him in the courts, but you're going to sue him in the courts after he stuck the Marines on people? You're going to sue him in the courts after the National Guard actually tramples some people and, let's say, shoots a few people? You're going to sue him in the courts after you're locked up in an unlimited detention? I mean, what good is that? How's that protection? So that was the last ring that people had to hold themselves to America. All the rings are broken. There is no more belief that California isn't a nation state, can't survive on its own, isn't wildly culturally different from America, and isn't going to be punished for being culturally us. And we can't protect ourselves under the federal system. So you're talking about how the belief has grown. I would point out that. Now, nobody's going, I back Calexit, we're all for it. The idea of secession is still strong for Californians. But Californians are fine going, I don't want to do anything the federal government says. We could basically survive independently of the federal government. We're basically a nation state on our own. Screw Donald Trump, and let's make our own laws. That's all secession talk. All of that is secession talk. Californians participated in it every day. So do their politicians, and so do their intellectual elites. So if you look at the trajectory, it's only going one way. And by the way, it never recedes, right? America did not come back together after 2016, 2020, 2024. There is no reverse trend of let's hug a MAGA person and let's come together. That's not happening. So the trend's only going one way, and there's no reverse trend. If you follow that out, it's only going to keep going this way. We get 2 senators, Wyoming, and about 35, 40 states. They're a fraction of our size, also get 2. On top of that, the Electoral College gives outsized weight to these small states. So even though we have more votes, it's not really in proportion to our size compared to Wyoming. So Wyoming and these 35 little states have an outsized representation in the Electoral College too. Finally, because Congress put a cap on the limit of the legislature, I think in the 1970s, we don't actually have a fair proportion of Congress people in relation to our body size because they froze it. So we're not equally represented in the Senate, the House, the presidency, etc. What that's called is tyranny of the minority. There's a guy everybody should look up called Norman Ornstein. He's a demographer. And what he pointed out was, you got to go back to Kavanaugh. Remember Justice Kavanaugh when he was appointed to the Supreme Court? How long ago was that? Like 4 years ago? 4 years ago, people were pointing out that a president who won the minority vote, Trump, approved a Supreme Court justice that the majority of Americans did not like because he was approved by a majority of senators who represented only 40% of the population. Basically, if we were a functional democracy, Kavanaugh never would have gone in. But a minority of the population represents a majority of the Senate. A minority of the population was able to get Trump in. You add those 2 minority populations, they get whatever they want. That's how the system works in the Constitution. So you had a guy get in office who was backed by 2 offices, the Senate and the presidency, that did not have majority support. That's a fact, straight up. Additionally, Norman Ornstein points out that according to the U.S. Census, 35 to 40 states are going to continue to be really, really, really red, very white. Minorities are going to leave. LGBTQ will leave. All the liberal thinking people who are born there are going to leave and go to some other place. And so that red state map in the center of America is going to be even more isolated, watching Fox News, never meeting liberals, never hearing liberal ideas, never dealing with And immigrants don't really want to move there now. So you have gay people, immigrants, minorities getting the hell out of the center. And their liberal kids going, I can't be around these bigots, getting the hell out. That's just going to turn them even more super conservative and isolated beyond what you see today. Norman Ornstein, the demographer, is looking at that and predicting that. So he's saying it's going to get even more hardcore red, basically for the next 2 decades. The U.S. Census that says that it's not till 2045 when minorities will actually be the dominant voter. So there are more minority babies. They're not voters for another 20 years. So however bad you think it is now, it's going to get worse, and it will go that way for another 2 decades, or about the time that we have a functional space colony on Mars. Now, getting back to the next question that you were talking about, I'm not joking, and none of that's an exaggeration. Those are all facts, by the way. How possible is this? Well, I think it's more possible than ever. Now, everybody keeps saying Donald Trump's never going to let you go. You're the 4th largest economy. And I go, okay, but tell me the time that you've ever seen a Republican elected official or anyone on any conservative radio show or program ever say in the last 4 decades, California's better at business than us in the red states. They actually subsidize us. We're the welfare queens. And it turns out those liberals with all the immigrants and undocumented running around and transgender people do better with money and subsidize us in our backwards ways. Can you name any conservative who said that on radio or television in the last 4 decades, whether elected officials or just a popular host? Just one. Tell me one person who said that once ever. Perhaps in the last 50 decades, 5 decades, can you name one person? Exactly. I have this conversation with 1 million people. They're like, they'll never let us go. And I just ask them this question, and everybody has the same look you have. Damn, I can't think of a time anyone has ever admitted the truth about us, ever on that side, ever in any way, ever. Okay. Well, if they've never admitted the truth, how do they know? How do we know that they actually know how important we are? Right? If I say apples suck, apples suck, apples suck, and I do that for 40 decades, and then the one day I come out on the 41st year and I go, actually, I was joking. I love apples. Is that plausible? I'm the guy that said apples suck for literally every year for 40 years. How reasonable is it that 41st year I suddenly go, I lied the whole time? They believe it. Secondly, to back it up, Trump's first term, the Republicans in Congress had a conference in Congress where they said California's a welfare state and that the 35 red states donate more to us. That's completely not true. And the LA Times, yes, the LA Times did an editorial going, I don't know how you get this so wrong. But basically all of Congress and Trump and Speaker Boehner, or whoever was in charge, basically said this, and it's totally opposite, which comes back to the thing. How do we know that they know that we're good at business when they trash talk us all the time? So if we don't have a financial interest and we're just the place that puts up with undocumented immigrants and mutilates children and supports gay marriage and has too many minorities and allows these immigrants to speak whatever language they want and believes in climate change and does all this stuff that they think is wrong and backwards, why not get rid of us? Secondly, there's a guy called Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson. They had an interview this week. They literally said California's already seceded, that the way that we're reacting to the federal government on immigration is equivalent to the attack on Fort Sumter. That's not an exaggeration. That's what they said. They viewed it as us already seceding. And then they also said, we have to be broken in California or America will be lost. We're such a bad influence on America that if Trump doesn't come down now and put us in place, our sickness will spread to the rest of the country. Well, newsflash, you're not going to put California down and break us. Sorry. I understand you guys all think we're liberals and we're weak and we can't fight back. That's not true, but you're not going to believe that. So if we go by their own logic, if a California being part of America means the destruction of America and you can't control California, then you must allow California to leave in order to save the U.S., right? For the good of the country. You should let toxic, backwards, evil, bad idea, horrible influence California leave because you can't control us and we're nothing but horrible, bad ideas, right? That's what you guys have said every day for decades. I believe you. I believe you mean that. And now I'm taking you up on it. You think we're disgusting? You think our culture is backwards and wrong? You think it brings down America? You think we're horrible? You think it's okay to send active duty combat trained Marines in order to put us into place? Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson said that. Big voices on the right. Well, when their whole plan fails, I guess they'll have nothing left but to get rid of California in order to save America. And we're talking about Donald Trump, who literally hates us. I mean, the Prime Minister of Denmark and a Canadian government minister both said that on TV. When heads of state on the other side of the planet know how much Trump hates us, pretty much there. Plus, he likes making deals, right? Trump, you wanted to be the guy who saved babies, right? You wanted to get rid of abortion. Everybody said it couldn't be done. He doesn't promote this now, but right after he got abortion repealed, he's like, I'm the guy. All the Republicans wanted to get rid of abortion for decades. Trump, was the only guy who could make it happen and save America. He's backed away from that messaging. But go back to the first month after abortion was overturned. That's what he was saying. I'm the savior. I'm the only one. He likes being seen that way. Okay. Save America from evil, nasty, wicked, horrible California, Trump.
For undocumented immigrants who are feeding the nation, right? Doing the jobs, doing hard work that many other people who complain about them would never do. I mean, in the Central Valley alone, how many jobs are there that go unfilled, right? In the orchards in the fields in 105, 110 degree dry heat.
Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson directly contradicted you 2 days ago and said there's tons of people waiting to take those jobs. That's why we got to get rid of the undocumented, because they're keeping good jobs from people who are just lined up ready to get those.
It's funny. I live here and I don't see that. So I wonder where they're getting that.
They live on the other side of the continent. I don't know who to believe, bro.
Very hot take from people who have no idea what they're talking about. And I feel like this is a really good opportunity to get into some of the questions that our audience have wanted to ask you. I mean, the first episode that we had with you really sparked a lot of interest and a lot of conversation, especially with me and people who are like-minded in getting non-traditional messages out. So the first question I have from one of our audience members is, have there been any unofficial or informal signals of support from foreign governments like Mexico, Canada, or even China regarding California independence?
Can we put up tough questions in the Chiron? Okay. Yes. So like I said, there was a Green Party member of the Canadian government who's a sitting member of the parliament there who said California should secede and join Canada. That was 2 months ago. Additionally, 2 months ago, there was the Prime Minister of Denmark said California should secede and join them. So that's two right there. Additionally, when Donald Trump sent the Marines in, China said that they would personally come to California and protect us. Additionally, there was a whole fiasco with a fake California embassy in Russia. Additionally, Tony Blair, when he was Prime Minister of England, came to California, met with Governor Schwarzenegger, didn't meet with George W. Bush, the president, and flew right back. You can also point out that when Trump was president, Politico magazine, which is one of the top magazine covering political news, had an article called basically referring to Jerry Brown as the president of a separate country. What they were talking about was that when California went to the Paris Climate Change Accord meetings, the Germans and the French came out with like 16 cars to meet Californians. When the American delegation came out, they had one car. So Trump's president, he's president of the country. Germany and France separately go, oh, you get one car, America. California, here's 16 cars and our top diplomats, and we'll have the prime minister meet with you. America, here's some low-level secondary staff you can have. It was so egregious, and they treated us so much like a foreign country. That's Germany and France. That Politico had to say, damn, you basically operate like a separate country. Additionally, recently, after Trump sent in, did his thing, I can't name names, we made a big impression at the California Democratic Party convention, and there are high-level people who basically have approached us and said, I'm in. I can't name names out of respect, and, they have to be able to trust us. But Yes, we have heard that. So I think you have world heads around the planet who've recognized this, called it out. Allies, not allies, but all people who are major players on the international scene. And now we're starting to see domestic elected officials jump into the foray.
If Trump, if his administration get us into a war with Iran, does that mean that we would be essentially brought in and dragged into another world war? And what does that mean when it comes to nuclear powers? Does that mean that we are at risk with potentially possible nuclear attacks?
Yes. The answer is yes to everything. So as long as you're part of America, Trump gets us into World War III, we're automatically obligated to go. Nobody who can say, I choose to not be deployed as a Marine or sailor. We have the largest amount of active duty Marines, active duty soldiers, active duty Air Force, and active duty Navy of any state in the Union. We also have the largest amount of veterans of all four branches and the largest amount of veterans total of any state. People who signed up will do their job. That's what they're supposed to do. Unfortunately, that'll mean that they'll die for something they don't believe in. This has already happened. There was a guy called George W. Bush. He put us into the Iraq War. 2/3 of all the we don't want to go events were here in California alone. We had 2 of the million-person marches. 2! There was only 1 in the rest of America, and it was in New York City. So all of America had 1 protest, and we had 2 on our own, twice as much as all America against going into Iraq. Guess who had the most number of active duty troops in Iraq? And guess who came back with the largest number of dead boys and girls in plastic bags? It also gets worse. So anytime America picks on someone, we're the target. I'll point out 9/11. Homeland Security Director Michael Chertoff said that California was the most likely to be attacked by a nuclear bomb after 9/11 because we have the most seaports and airports and border ports. They distributed 9/11 protection funding evenly across all 50 states. So even though California was the most vulnerable, it only got 1/50th of the amount of money to protect us from being blown up by a nuclear bomb. The situation was so bad that former Senator Dianne Feinstein had to beg and plead for us to get adequate money to get nuclear radiation detectors in our ports. Yes, this happened. Yes, we were vulnerable to terrorist attack for 5 years after 9/11. We got 1/50th money. We were totally vulnerable. They did nothing about it. They absolutely knew about it. And our senators had to go, what the hell? So that was then. Then you can fast forward to the largest ISIS attack in America was in San Bernardino, California. So we said, don't go into Iraq. Tough. We get our most number of boys and girls in plastic bags coming back dead. Then we get the largest terrorist attack too from people who came from Iraq. Then we can fast forward to Donald Trump threatening Rocket Man, North Korea, last time he was in office. The first thing North Korea did was release a video showing they can get a ballistic missile to strike California. So whether it's the war on terror or North Korea or anything, America loves threatening people. And the first thing they do is go, I can kill you by attacking California. So Iran is just the latest example in a string of us being vulnerable going back 20 years. It is not safe for us to be part of America because America loves adventurism, loves going and stirring up hornets' nests, thinks like no one's going to get it. And that means that we're always the first person to be attacked. I also don't think it's an accident. If you look at something called the population density map of America, most of the American population is on the East Coast going out to the Midwest. Half of the Western continent isn't really populated until you get to us. So who cares if California gets blown up by a nuclear bomb? The radiation won't ever get to most of the American population. Also, we're the dumping ground. So America's failed invasion in Vietnam, highest number of Hmong refugees, highest number of Vietnamese refugees here. America's failed colony in Iran, highest number of Iranian refugees here. So whenever they screw up and they go, oh, well, where are we going to put all these people we don't want? I know, dump them in California. That goes back to the 70s. And you can go back to the 2000s. Let's pick on somebody. Oh, they're threatening to blow up California. I don't care. Let's continue to be aggressive. This is the reality we live with. You're just seeing a more common version right now. It goes back decades. It's no longer safe for us to be part of America. Now, if America was not picking fights, that would be a different story. But since the year 2000, America's been in full-blown pick fights, start mischief mode. And that was through the Biden administration. Remember, the Biden administration loved overthrowing Syria, and the Obama administration loved overthrowing Libya. So this is not just a Republican thing. This is a America thing.
How do you envision California's relationship with Mexico evolving in the wake of independence, especially concerning immigration, trade, and water rights?
Well, if they're talking about water rights, they're probably talking about the Colorado River. And I have already told people, don't plan on that being there. The director of the Colorado River has said a thing called climate change is going to wipe out the Colorado River. So don't plan on it being there in the future. People would say, oh, if you leave, we'll cut off the Colorado River to LA. And I said, go ahead. It's already being cut off by Mother Earth. Nothing we can do about that. We have to replace it anyways. As far as relationships with Mexico, I would point out to a time in the 1970s where a program called the Bracero program, ARM, means arm. Undocumented immigration was never a problem before in the past. You never heard about this before the 1970s. Never happened. It was only after the federal government ended what's known as the ARM program, where they would work with the Mexican government to bring in laborers. They ended that program. And then within 5 years, you started saying, hordes of undocumented are going to take us over. While the Bracero program was there, I think from the 1930s to the 1970s, a 40-year period, no one ever had a problem. No one cared. Like my family crossed into Texas illegally because no one cared. No one cared. It wasn't until that program was there. So we created the problem. The reason they did that was the Bracero program guaranteed wages for the workers. Construction and agriculture want to play below normal rates for labor, so they can. Labor is the costliest input into ag and construction. If I can reduce my labor price, I can make more profits. So if I work in the housing, construction sector, or agriculture sector, and I'm a multi-million-dollar company, it makes sense for me to make sure there's no real immigration agreement with Mexico, and there's no real nice agreement for people to come back and forth, because then I can terrorize undocumented people and force them to work for a fraction of the wage, and my profits go up. So if we were independent, we would have immigration reform within 1 year. America hasn't done it since Ronald Reagan 45 years ago. On our own, we do it in one. Obama promised to do it, and he backed out on Latin people. And that was the last good chance we had. So it's probably never going to happen. So 1 year, we can get 2 million people out of the shadows, or you'll never have it ever for the rest of the American empire, next 50 to 80 years. Secondly, because we don't hate Mexico and say things like they're all stupid and they're all rapists. Remember when Trump said we're all rapists and murderers? Well, they heard that in Mexico. That didn't really go over very well. We have great relations. We could establish a Bracero program, have everybody coming in here get good wages, keep all the bad trash from coming in here, and allow all the hardworking people to come here. We could also probably set up joint bank accounts where we could give them the ability to store the money they earned in California, earn interest, so they could actually go back to Mexico with even more money, which they invest in the Mexican economy. The remittance payments, that's what it's called, actually are the number one thing building infrastructure in Mexico. Roads, dams, schools, you need that thing to have a modern economy. Well, a lot of the money comes from remittance payments. We could help grow Mexico, we could make California safer, and we could eliminate people having to live in the shadows within 1 year of being independent. It will never happen as long as we're part of America. Look up the Reagan reform and ask yourself, how come America hasn't done it in 45 years? You want to wait another 50 years?
We could benefit too in a very non-hostile, friendly relationship with one of the largest economies on the planet, right? We could benefit from people who are highly skilled and doing incredible things. And, you know, we are a technological powerhouse here. We're a manufacturing powerhouse. I mean, Visalia and Fresno, they're quickly becoming just manufacturing and logistics hubs. You can't get in a better position than that to actually accept high-skilled people who are from foreign countries and able to contribute to our economy as well as theirs.
Right. You can get cheaper labor. You can increase the price of labor for workers in Mexico, but still get much cheaper labor than doing it here. Additionally, before China took off and was making 90% of the goods that come to Walmart, all those goods were being made in Mexico. A lot of people don't remember that when NAFTA was signed, for about the first 2 to 3 years, the maquiladora industry in Mexico was the number one place for the production of cheap goods used in America. China saw that and realized that with state subsidies, they could drop the price even lower. And that's why manufacturing left Mexico and went to China. So we could actually have a better trade balance here with goods produced right next to our border. China has to produce the goods and then pay the oil fee to ship them across the Pacific, which is the largest ocean in the world, and get here. What if you could have products that are the same production cost and they're literally just across the border? We're talking about cheaper goods, metrically by far, than anything coming out of China, but at the same quality. Ready to go if we're willing to play ball. By the way, America hasn't agreed to do this in 20 years. And Trump's word with China has totally backfired and failed on him. So don't count on America fixing that.
I want to touch on an independent California national defense. That's something that our viewers were really wanting to touch more on and understand better, right? Especially from the Calexit standpoint. How would we protect ourselves if we did become a sovereign state? So the question I have is, in the event of independence, how would California handle national defense? Would it build its own military or enter into defense agreements with existing powers?
Well, we might enter into defense agreement with existing powers. California is very good at signing treaties and trade deals right now. Our governors, going back to Schwarzenegger, Brown, and Newsom, about 25 years, 3 governors, they travel to foreign countries and say, I'll sign a memorandum of understanding with you on climate change. That's a treaty. And then they'll travel to other countries and say, if you invest in us, I'll invest in you. That's a jobs agreement. Those things are only supposed to be done by the US president, period. So the last 3 of our governors totally ignore that and already travel the world signing trade deals and treaties. So we're well equipped to do that. When we're looking at the military, I think the thing to point out is the size of the California economy. So if you look at the amount of money spent on military, which is key to the actual prowess of that military, California would be the 3rd largest military overnight, independent. So we'd be bigger than Russia. So when you have that much money and you can shift that into a military like Russia did or China did. I mean, this is the reason why they're worried about Chinese military. It's not because they got better at training their people. It's because they got more money. So now they can buy more rockets, boats, jets, planes, etc. So money is directly related to the power of a military. Why do you think America spends 19 times more than everybody else? It's not because it's just, that all goes into training the troops. No, that goes into satellite systems, missiles, reconnaissance, spies, new technology, all that stuff that gives them the technological edge. One of the biggest things the CIA and the Pentagon have pointed out is that China wants to have tech dominance over America. And that is the largest military threat. So if you look at things by the CIA and the Pentagon, they're not saying, oh no, China has 10 times the population of us. What they're saying is, oh no, China is going to have 10 times the money and they have 10 times the interest in tech development. That's the problem. So when we look at it that way, name the place with the most engineers in all of California. In all of America, it's California. Name the place with the most cybersecurity engineers. Name the place with the most people who build satellites. Name the place with most people who build tech, cutting-edge jet fighters, cutting-edge missiles, cutting-edge satellite systems, cutting-edge internet systems. It's all here. Additionally, 4th largest economy, we're bigger than Russia. So nobody's going around saying, I've got 1 million guys, but I don't have trucks or jets or planes or missiles. You're considered a weak army that's easy to kill off. So it's only when you have those other things. We would have the 3rd largest military going by all that tech stuff. And we would have more people who know how to make that than anywhere else in America, which means that America would need to be nice to us and be allied with us so that it could retain its military technological advantage. There was a thing called BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure, 1990s, President Clinton. The Cold War ended. Ronald Reagan put a lot of military bases in California. Clinton cut 2/3 of them gone. In that report, the Pentagon has to admit that they tried to entice California engineers to leave. And they said, I don't care. I'm staying here. And they go, well, you'll lose your government job. And they go, I'll find another job. So when the military tried to get all those Californians to leave in the 1990s, they had to say in shock, we can't get them to go. They're just not worried about losing the military contract. They'll figure they'll get something else out. And the military was so worried about that. Why were they worried about that? Unless they need us. And if you need us, you need to be nice to us. Like we're going to be nice to you. Additionally, no country gets invaded that's connected to the global economy. So if you look at Syria, they're trying Iran, Libya, Yemen, Iraq, Vietnam. They were all disconnected from the global economy. There's a reason why you do embargoes on these people and you cut them off before you blow them up. That's so that any of your billionaires who've invested money in their economy don't lose their money. Countries don't go and cost their billionaires to lose money. So let's say China wants to invade California. There's about 100 billionaires in China who are going to say, don't do that because you're going to cost me all my billions. I've invested billions in California. When you invest billions here and then it gets blown up, you lose everything. The number one place for investment in the entire planet is California. Foreign direct, FDI number one. So we have the most Russian investors, the most Chinese investors, the most Iranian investors, the most North Korean investors, the most, you name it. Why would they attack us when all that means is they're going to lose money and go poor? Secondly, why would they attack us when we'll have the third largest missile array of any military overnight? So those are considerations. People don't know that we'd automatically be bigger than Russia. People don't know that the key to military prowess is all that tech. It's the aircraft carrier and the jets, right? They're not walking U.S. soldiers to the Iranian border and having them shoot across like in World War II or throw grenades. That's not what's going on. It's long-range missile strikes, drone strikes, satellites, hacking into their computer systems. That's all tech. That means you need us because we're the number one people who know how to do that. When Obama wanted to create the cybersecurity command, he came to California specifically to start it. So the backbone of the entire military's intelligence operations, satellites, missiles, all the tech stuff is full of Californians. You cut us off, you lose all of that. In about 5 years, you won't be able to defend yourself against China or Russia. I would consider that Americans would consider that not a good idea.
It's an interesting take. That's a really great segue into this next question that we have. It's more so a statement and an inquiry as to what the Calexit Movement's idea on this is. And this is one of the most concerning things that I've seen, at least in my adult life. In the Big Beautiful Bill, there is a provision that would make it illegal for state governments to regulate AI for 10 years. What does that mean for California?
Well, it's not going to be good. Right. So if you're saying, hey, we have this burgeoning technology that's going to go into all these new great places, but dangerous places, and the government can't regulate any of it. That reminds me of the 1930s when they invented the Tommy gun. And you had the rise of gangsters like Babyface Nelson, because they didn't have gun laws back then. That was, what do you mean gun laws? We don't do that. So these gangsters went around with a Tommy gun that could shoot out 60 rounds of 40 caliber ammunition and just blow away an entire police department. Johnny Depp did a movie about it. 7 years after the introduction of that gun, they go, you know what? We got to have some gun regulations. And they started banning the Tommy gun. And then all those gangsters started going away because they didn't have super powerful armament. So that's what's going to happen with AI. They're going to be able to develop things. A lot of it's going to be great, but anything horrible, nasty, they're going to be able to continue to do that for another decade. Who knows where it goes there? California is way more technologically advanced, and our politicians are much more technologically aware than in America. I point out for you the time that Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook went to the Senate, and he had to explain how Facebook works to them. And they go, well, what if I don't want to buy a chocolate? Do I have to see the ad? And like, he's explaining Facebook to the people who run the entire country. That's insane. You don't have to do that in California with our politicians. So right off there, we're talking about regulating an industry. What's Facebook? Versus I already have Facebook, Instagram, and every other social media platform on my own because I'm a California politician. That's what it takes to win. So you're talking about regulating, we're well suited for it. Secondly, let's talk about corruption. You really think Donald Trump's going to be the guy fighting corruption? California created the law to punish people who do revenge. So you're dating somebody and they give you spicy pictures. You can't release that after you're done dating them, or you go to prison. We did that. The reason we did that is because our Constitution actually protects privacy where there is no protection in America. So there is no constitutional protection of privacy, which is why they have no laws to protect people against revenge, whereas we do, and we've already done that. So we're talking about regulating people against tech industries and being aware of emerging technology and wanting to protect people. We vastly outpace America as far as where we're at and what we're doing. Now, I'm not saying what the future holds, but who would you rather bet on? The guy who doesn't know Facebook or the people who've already done modifying and reining in tech companies?
And I do feel, I mean, considering that I've worked in tech myself and I have some exposure to that industry, right? California is actually very tight, very, very restrictive when it comes to the safety of people. Just cookies alone. There are so many laws that protect the privacy of people, and that started in California, and that was adopted worldwide, essentially. Save a couple of countries who are also very technologically advanced. One of the other questions I wanted to get into, and this is something that is alleged. There is no direct proof yet that's been proven in a court of law. There have been recent reports that there may have been election interference, and Kamala Harris may have won the election. If that's the case, what does that mean for the United States? What does that mean for a supposed illegitimate government and illegitimate president with his administration? And what does that mean for the Calexit movement?
Well, it changes nothing. So we were saying America's falling apart. Our principal idea is that the ship's sinking and it's time to get off, unless you want to sink too. So the fact that Trump rigged an election is only more proof of the concept. You're going to put your faith in America where elections can be rigged? That just proves the point all over again. Well, Harris should have been there. Yeah, but she didn't because the system's so screwy they can do stuff like that now. And this is the other rigged election, right? And I point out the other rigged election in 2001 with George W. Bush. A lot of people forget that. They rigged that. They rigged the Supreme Court. His cousin ran Florida and ran the voting thing, and they accidentally lost 30,000 black people votes and still said it's totally cool. The Supreme Court goes, no, he's prez. That thing was as third world dictatorship as it could be. So we're on our second one. I think what the problem is people had 2 terms of Obama, and they felt that's the normal America. The country was falling apart, and they just happened to put a pretty face in front of it while it continued to fall. People look at him and they get confused and think that's normal. That's not normal. George W. Bush before him saying to the world, I don't read, and being proud of saying that on television is closer to Donald Trump saying all Mexicans are than Obama's I have a dream for America thing. Obama's the fluke. He's the exception. It's great, but people think that's going to come back. No, he was the one guy you get once of those in a generation. There's not going to be a second one. You got to go back to Clinton, maybe 35 years ago to find somebody who was as competent. People don't realize that Biden, Bush, W. Bush, and Trump are all equally bad, stupid, incompetent. It's the system not working. I'd also point out the 2008 global collapse of the economy. That was because there's a federal regulatory body that oversees banks and how much money they can loan in and out. And they basically just didn't bother to ask questions because they thought it was cool. And that's why the entire economy crashed, because you had a federal regulatory body who just doesn't do their job. Christian Bale was in a movie about this. I forget the name of it, but they cover that. And they go, hold on, why didn't the whole economy rest? And you go, yeah, we just thought it was cool. We don't really check. Well, when have you checked? We haven't checked in 13 years. You can go back to Obama. Somebody was asking, I was talking to a young African-American man, and he goes, well, why did you get on this so early? And I go, when Obama was fighting the Tea Party, the argument was so bad, America lost its credit rating for the first time. So America lost its credit rating on the entire planet because the entire planet said, I see the level of bickering in your government, and I have no more faith that you can handle things like adults. So I'm going to drop the amount of faith and credit I have in your economy. That has never happened. America built the entire financial system after World War II. And for the first time ever, the entire planet said, I don't have faith in you. That was during Obama. That's over 10 years ago. It wasn't working. Trajectory, brother, trajectory. Point. Little bit of a happiness blip. Look at the underlying background. You're collapsing the economy. You're losing faith. The Philippines and Turkey, longtime allies, turned on America when Obama was around. I don't think that's Obama's fault, but it was already, they were seeing things fall apart. Partly because they saw George W. Bush lie to the entire planet, lie to the UN, commit war crimes, and violate the UN Charter. And nobody was imprisoned or punished in America. George W. Bush even went on television and joked about it. He gave a speech 2 years ago where he goes, when Russia invades a smaller country illegally, like Iraq, that is, I meant Ukraine. I guess we kind of did that too in Iraq. And then he laughs about it, and there's 100 Americans in the audience, and they all laugh about it too. You violated the UN Charter. You almost started World War III. You lied to the planet. You committed more war crimes than Russia. We're upset that Russia's killed about 50,000 Ukrainians, civilians. America killed 500,000 civilians in Iraq. Russia hasn't touched a 15th of the amount of civilian casualties we caused. You'll never hear about that. But we're talking about laid out dead civilians who had nothing to do with that. We trump everybody by far. And nothing happened to those people. Well, China and Russia paid attention. Then there was Obama, and he got a deal with Russia and China to only do a little military attack on Libya. And we decided to lie to them and invade the whole country. Well, guess what? They remembered that. So you're already breaking international law, going back to W. Bush, through Obama, through Biden, through Trump. He's only the latest dude. Our allies don't have faith in us anymore. They're pulling away. They're forming new alliances. And like I said, we lost our credit rating. There's a rival to the US dollar. That only happens when the rest of the world's coming together and saying, I'm not sure I trust you anymore, America. Not like 1945 to 1990. You're just not that person anymore. You're just not. You're not that guy anymore. And I don't know who you are, but I see you pick brain dead idiots and then guys who are so senile they should be in a hospital, and then another brain dead idiot. And that seems to be the best you can do.
I think we can all agree that we haven't been given very good options.
Right? Biden was chosen. Remember, he canceled the primaries. Then there was the Iowa caucus where Bernie won, but the counting machines actually frizzed out that night. And then Biden said, I won, when actually it was Bernie, but you didn't know that for 2 months. And those machines were actually built by ex-staffers of Hillary and Obama. And then 2 months later, Biden says, oh, we're not doing primaries at all. I'm just president. That's undemocratic. That's illegal. He was just forced in. So I don't like Trump, but when they're talking about how Trump's illegitimate, what the hell are you doing canceling primaries? That has absolutely no place in democracy. No place. And yet the Dem Party did it. We're like, yep, everything's cool. No, that's how they do things in failed Latin American dictatorships. But you couldn't say anything because he was not Trump. So you have to act like, well, if it's not Trump, then it must be all good. I'm sorry, if Trump sawed off one leg and then you saw off my foot on the other leg, you still hurt me. I know you didn't cut off a whole leg, but you cut off a foot. Now I can't walk at all. That's you. You did that. And finally, to point out, Trump came up with the SALT tax. Remember, he was going to repeal the SALT tax on California, which was going to hurt California homeowners because they couldn't take a federal deduction on their taxes. So it's going to raise taxes up. Biden kept that same SALT tax punishment on us for his entire term. So if Trump did that to hurt us, what does it mean when Joe Biden did absolutely nothing to repeal it for the next 4 years? He actually loves us? Opposite of Trump, but he's doing the same thing to hurt us? That doesn't make any sense. We're expendable. We're the place where if things go wrong, you just dump it in California. I was going to back up another point you said where we don't have control of the economy. We had a massive recession in 2001 here in California. That was because the Federal Reserve set interest rates lower. So we were having a growing economy and we were facing inflation, which means you want to raise interest rates so that the money doesn't go into an inflated stance. The Federal Reserve did the total opposite of what was good for our California economy in 2001 and caused one of the most devastating recessions we've ever seen. They did that because it was good for the East Coast economy. Their economy needed lower interest rates. Our economy needed higher interest rates. Well, guess who lost? We have no power over the Federal Reserve ever. There was also the recession of 2008, and I point out in the recession of 2001 and 2008, California was a donor state, had been a donor state for decades. We went to Bill Clinton and we went to Barack Obama and said, can you just give us $10 billion to get over this hump by recession you caused, given we've already put $500 billion extra in your economy? 2 Democratic presidents, you get nothing. So what's the point of them? Well, I like you guys. I'm just not going to do anything when you're hurt and on the deathbed, but I'll continue to take money out of your pocket. But hey, I like you. I'm not like that guy. When he takes money from you and you're on your deathbed, he's mean. I'm at least nice when I say get screwed and continue to fund me. All facts.
Since we're on the topic of economics, let's go into finance and cryptocurrency. On the calexitnow.org website, there is a mention of the Cali Nation coin. It's a cryptocurrency, right? Could you give us more information about that and how that works? And please explain it to someone like me who is genuinely confused about how cryptocurrency works. And I feel like this is something that isn't talked about much, but could have a lot of promise given a scenario where we do gain independence.
So you're already on the right track. Technically, the best person to talk to is Dr. Xavier Mitchell. He's the CEO of Calexit Now, and he's the one that launched it. I'm not super versed on cryptocurrency, and I haven't been as in touch with this particular project, but I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to give you a 30,000-foot answer. If you want more, you got to get Dr. X in. Cryptocurrency is basically built on a thing called blockchain technology. It's basically a computer program that's able to track every single action or code that's inserted into the program. So they view it as a time capsule. Any programming change, there's a record of it. Somehow they mine currency by creating a program that generates a crypto coin. I don't fully understand it, but it takes so much effort to write the programs to make a cryptocurrency, and it's based on blockchain that is considered a stable currency, that it can't be manipulated. Whether you believe that or not is open to debate. A lot of banks don't buy that, but that's the theory. So if we create a cryptocurrency here, we have a currency that we can use to fund the movement. Advertising, we want to do a tour to go to every city in California and talk about independence. We want to do a music video fest, a film festival, and we have a 50 million person influencer event coming up in July. All those things cost money. Politics costs money. But if you get in now, it's cheap. You can help fund the movement. And then when we're independent, this would be the flagship currency for an independent California, because it would be the only currency not linked to the Federal Reserve, which would be something very important for an emerging nation. But the way that we pay for everything is that we lose money being part of America. That's just to be clear. So you said we're a donor state. We are. We lose about $82 billion on top of everything we get back. So if we're independent, we're actually in the plus $82 billion per year. That's also on top of the fact that we lose sales of laptops and computer programs because we're tied to America. America loves spying on people. A lot of the world doesn't like being spied on, so they don't buy our laptops or software programs, which means we lose about $6 billion a year. Additionally, we're a trade-focused economy. About 40% of our economy is based on international trade. We're only 10% of the American, it's about 7% of the American economy is. When we travel to a foreign country and say we're ready to do a deal, but we got to go to the federal government and they wait 10 years to approve it, we're losing hundreds of billions of dollars. There's a book called Global California by Professor Lowenthal. It's what inspired me to do Calexit. He said, look, if you want to be part of America because of patriotism, fine, but don't think it has anything to do with your bottom line. You are losing being part of America financially. You have your trade deals held up for 5 to 10 years when it's almost half of your economy. The other half of your economy is Hollywood sales, which are international, and then tech sales, which they're not going to buy your product because of the horrible stuff America does. And then on top of that, you're a donor state. So you cut all that graph and welfare, and you cut regulations by 50%. So for every business in California, they don't do federal regulation anymore. They just do state. When we ask businesses about that, they go, that would be a boom for business. So we're actually talking about $100 to $200 billion more per year because we'd be unleashed and not held back. It's a financial loss being part of America. If people want us, hey, I get that, but I still want to do it, fine. But you should be fully aware the donor state, the lost tech sales, and the trade deals. It's a financial loss every year for California to be part of America. That's a fact, and that goes back to the late 1980s. That's not me saying that. That's economists and international trade experts. We just don't talk about it because nobody wants to hear that. We lose every year financially being part of the U.S. And if you're like, well, it's an insurance program, and they'll come and get us when things are bad. Like when we had a global recession for Obama and Clinton, and they said, tough, we're not even going to give you $10 billion each, and we're the Democrats who love you. I mean, my God, if that's the reaction from Democrats, what do you think we're going to get from Republicans? We got nothing from the people who said they got our back. Show me the financial benefit to this. I'm still waiting for anybody to show how it's a financial benefit to California since 1977 to be part of the USA. I have yet to see any statistics that show that.
Last question I have. What is your message to Californians who are on the fence about supporting the Calexit movement?
Everything we predicted has come to pass. We were the only ones predicting it. Everybody said we're crazy whack jobs. And all of those people who said we were wrong are in fact proven wrong now. And we, the crazy ones, are the only ones who said this. When we went to the California Democratic Convention, we were the only people saying the way to deal with Trump is independence, period. Nobody else was saying that. And then 2 weeks later, Trump goes and they go, well, you can't take our National Guard. Yeah, I can. Well, you can't send combat troops on us. Yeah, I can. Well, you can't arrest our elected officials. Yeah, I can. Well, you can't throw senators to the ground. Yeah, I can. And what did we do? Did you watch the conference with the California Assembly people in response to Trump sending in the Marines? They're mostly out of LA. All of them did this. Trump, stop. Stop. That's the best you got is you stop. You have nothing. You can do nothing. Oh, we got your back. I kept hearing, well, we got your back. We're going to sue. After you're already beat up or dead or imprisoned or locked up. After the community is already terrorized by combat trained troops. After the city of Paramount is already deleted and Latinos live in fear. Then you're going to come and make it better. Well, my grandma used to get beaten up by my grandpa. And the priest would always come around afterwards and go, just calm down. Don't argue. You'll just make it worse. That's what that sounds like to me. We're going to let your ass get beat, but then we'll come back afterwards and go, it's okay. Come on, here's a hug. Last time we played this game, people died. There was 5 Latin people in California who are dead because California said, you can't do unlimited detention. The federal court said, yeah, you can. California said, you can't force businesses to comply with you to round up undocumented. Federal government said, yeah, you can. 5 people died. They're dead. Latin people. Not white people, not black people, not Asian people, Latin people. And no one seems to care. I've done about 15 shows on this, and I named the guys' names. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. So and one of those guys was a citizen who accidentally had organs shut down. They don't know how that happened. All his organs just turned off while he was in unlimited detention before they accidentally figured out he was a citizen. Whoops! Mistakes happen, right? Why you got that look on your face? Isn't it cool to have dead Latinos in unlimited detention with nobody held to account and expect that everything's going to be fine this time? I've seen so many California politicians. We got your back. We're going to protect you like you did last time. No, you didn't. 2/3 of the police stations and sheriff stations in California work with the federal government. They did put people in unlimited detention. You could do nothing about it. You weren't able to shut down the prisons, and people did die. You weren't able to stop the border wall. You weren't able to punish companies for the border wall. You weren't able to stop Trump federalizing the land and the sea and then selling it off. You weren't. You weren't able to stop businesses saying, I discriminate against people who are gay. You weren't able to stop police agencies from saying, if someone looks like you or me, it's legal for them to pull us over based upon our looks alone. That was when Obama was president. The Supreme Court said that. Yes, it's fully legal for you and I to be racially profiled in America. That's federal law. So I'm asking, where'd you win? You didn't protect the undocumented. You didn't force the businesses to comply. You didn't force the police agencies to comply. You couldn't keep them out of prison. People died. And those are the ones who died. Some people were locked up for a year and then they finally got out for nothing. You're going to have our back after people are dead and beaten up? You sound like the priest who went to my grandma after she got her ass beat. No, thank you. It means nothing to me. The best option is not talk. It's to get the hell out and make my own house and have a divorce. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about how we pushed up against Trump. What you're never going to hear from California politicians is the things they lost on. You'll see Rob Bonta. You'll see Newsom. We're going to fight. And just like we kicked ass last time. Okay. Tell them about the cases you lost. They won't ever do that. And there's a reason why. You'll hear big numbers. We won 60% of our cases. But that didn't protect the undocumented at all. Or gay people, or Muslims, or women, or minorities. But we won 60%. Who cares? Who cares? You didn't protect people. You couldn't. And you literally saw the conference where you had Assembly people 3 weeks ago. He's sending in the Marines, and the best they can do is go, stop. Stop. And we'll sue him in courts for months or years after you get your ass beat.
We'll definitely have you back on. Just want to commend you for having the courage to give this message to everyone, and also to lead a movement that 10 years ago even seemed impossible and now seems closer than ever and more possible than ever. So we'll give you updates, and we hope to hear updates from you. Where can people hear more about your message, and where can people find out more about the Calexit?
Go to calexitnow.org, calexitnow.org. We also have our social media linked at the bottom of that page. If the social media isn't on the calexitnow.org page, that's not our social media. There's lots of Calexit pages, but ours are the one at the bottom of the page. We're also going to have an influencer event coming up that the likes of which no one's ever seen. No one's ever gotten influencers to influence an event for politics. That's never happened. And nobody's got 50 influencers with 1 million followers each in the same room on the same issue ever. We're literally going to be making history in a couple weeks here.